there's so much change going on, I think, in how specifically people are doing advertising here in the US. So that's a big one. So I call it alternative marketing. So if you're on Amazon or you're, doing things, pushing traffic to your website, I think that's what I'm seeing a big change in here in the US domestic space. Pushing traffic off of Amazon to Amazon, it was always kind of a zero-sum game, but now with attribution and taking advantage of the brand referral program that they offer, I think that's becoming way more attractive. Using social commerce as a way to kind of grow your brand on marketplaces like Amazon, that's huge. Going live on TikTok, having creators push content on like a commission basis as opposed to a paid per post basis, that's become pretty attractive and economical for brands. And then, social commerce, which I just mentioned, huge demand for TikTok Shop, not just from US brands, but also from brands overseas, even brands in China who have had TikTok for years. It's one thing to be able to build an audience or following over there, but it's another thing to communicate to a different demographic, a different culture.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. Your host here, Alessandro Cutri, joined today by none other than Brad Seipp. Today's going to be an interesting episode. We're going to be diving into his story, a little bit about his company, Current Commerce, what they're up to within the e-commerce space, and some of the insights that he's seeing right now within the market. So definitely make sure to stick around. But without further ado, I'll kind of just pass it on over to you, Brad, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and telling the audience a little bit about your background and then what obviously led you into, starting Current Commerce.
Yeah, no, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone. Yeah, that's a loaded question. I could go on forever, but my claim to fame, besides four kids and a puppy, is probably I was a co-founder of a company called Quiver, which was a top 30 global Amazon seller back in the day. Very similar to like Pattern or Recom or some of these other guys. We were one of the early ones. And had the good fortune of selling that business to Advantage Sales and Marketing, the largest CPG retail broker here in the US. They had a good hypothesis, but a challenging one when it comes to CPG on Amazon. But we did our best and had some fun along the way. But yeah, fast forward to Current Commerce. When I came up for air after a 5-year non-compete, which I don't recommend anyone signing, a lot had changed, but also a lot hadn't. What had changed was just tech. I mean, there was just so many more applications and so much more tech to kind of enable your agency or your business as a seller or even vendor. More marketplaces that people were still learning about. But what hadn't changed, I think, were kind of the services around these marketplaces and with e-commerce. I think just a lot of the same old tactics and strategies. And so we really set out to differentiate ourselves, taking advantage of all the new tech and efficiencies, but also exploring all these other marketplaces that were popping up. And so we've kind of put together a pretty nice model, we think, with Current Commerce that makes us different, which I'm sure we'll get into. But at the end of the day, you will get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth when you talk to us. And if it's a fit, we'll go for it. If it's not, we'll tell you and try to give you some good advice and tips along the way.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that because I'm curious for I would love for the audience to know a little bit more about Current Commerce and what you guys do, because I know we were talking about off camera and it sounds like something fairly innovative in your approach in terms of how you guys go about things. Like, what would you say is your, I guess, unique value proposition in terms of what you guys do specifically?
Yeah, I mean, the other day I was on a podcast and we coined the term quantum commerce. I'm obsessed with technology. I've been reading all about the latest Google Willow quantum computing chip and how it was
Crazy.
maybe making calculations in other universes, like a multiverse. It just
Yeah.
blows my mind. And I was like, yeah, I think we're doing that in a way. And the reason that relates is because we're not just a one-trick pony, right? I mean, a lot of people put all their time and energy into Amazon or maybe their website, and that makes sense for some. But I think for others, they don't have that luxury. And so for us, we're alternative, if you will. So I think our big differentiator is we look at alternative ways of doing things. We look at alternative marketplaces, alternative tactics. And we start that with what we call the big audit. The big audit is really just an aggregation of a lot of different tools that are out there that a lot of people just don't know about. And
Yeah.
so it gives us a really, I think, interesting perspective and a ton of data out of the gate with no commitment to understand the full digital omni-channel, where you're at in the omni-channel and where you're not,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
trying to look at those insights and say, hey, this is where we think you should make some investments. This is how we
Mhm.
think we can help you with that. Here's what we think the return is going to be, as
Yeah.
opposed to, hey, let's try to squeeze out like 1 or 2 percentage points of incremental growth on Amazon by spending a fortune. We could probably go get 5, 10, 15, 20 on a whole nother channel that you're not even on today, whether it's a different US marketplace. Latin America has been huge. TikTok Shop has been unbelievable. And those are just fun endeavors that we get to go and play around with,
Yeah.
while making money at the same time.
Yeah, and you haven't. I like how you were telling me that you start everything with like an audit, right? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's like, if you would even maybe tell the audience a little bit about that specifically, because I think that you never know what's wrong with a car until you go under the hood and you actually see
Exactly.
what's
Exactly.
going on.
Yeah, no, it's funny. My partner says that all the time. He also has this like interesting doctor analogy, right? You go in for a physical and you kind of get your blood work, and now there's these full body like MRIs and CAT scans that people are getting, which I can't wait to get mine. I'm curious what's going on inside of there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, audit's a nasty word for analysis, but it really is, an audit, right? We're looking at how things are going, why they're happening, and I don't want to call it AI, but definitely there's just so much more technology out there that can help you understand what's going on without you having to spend hours, days, weeks, months, whatever, trying to figure it out. It really all kind of started in the financial, aspects of Amazon. Ton of companies out there now in that space. It's sort of become a commodity, but it blows my mind that there's tons of brands still out there that don't leverage these tools. And
Yeah.
so, and it's big money. I mean, you're talking 5 to 10% of ship cog value if you're a vendor, maybe upwards of 10% of top line if you're a seller. That's just Amazon. But there's the same financial audits available for Walmart or for your website, like Shopify, things like that. But it goes deeper. It
Yeah.
goes into advertising. It goes into parts and freight. Even cloud computing has audits, right? Which is in a whole nother conversation about what the waste is in cloud computing. Upwards of like 80% of cloud spend is waste. And so we just became obsessed with these tools and tried to find every like easy stuff, right? Just to give you an idea of like how is your content doing compared to others, right? Call that brand
Yeah.
indexing if you want. I call it content indexing. And so when you
Yeah.
get all of these audits done, you get a pretty comprehensive view of what's going on. And they're going to tell you to keep doing more of what you're doing or make some changes. It's also a great way of just auditing the auditors, right? A lot of people depend on their agency or they depend on their in-house team, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
I think Reagan said trust but verify, right? So trust but verify. That's what these things can enable you to do. And
Yeah.
then it allows us to create some trust out of the gate because it's not us telling you, it's the data. The data is telling you, which
Yeah.
means you are telling yourself what is going on.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so important, right? Obviously, not knowing that numbers don't lie, right? And you have to obviously look at what's going on behind the scenes, what can actually be improved upon. And a lot of times, a lot of business owners can make decisions based upon, emotion of feeling a certain way, but when you take a look at the holistic data, it tells a different story, right? And so I think that's like critical
Yep.
to because a lot of companies or agencies will want to just come in and just, implement their strategy without actually knowing where that company is in their journey and what's actually working versus not working and what levers you can pull versus not pull that would actually have exponential growth for them. Um, but I'm curious to
Oh
get.
yeah. I mean, there's so many ways.
I think there might be a slight delay here, but you were saying I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I mean, there's just so many ways to, turn the ship around or, find growth these days. But I just think too many people are, putting these blinders on and they're not taking them off, or when they take them off, they just kind of put another set on, right? And maybe you get a little bit more perspective, but you're not getting the full 180 view or 360 view, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like if you're on a walk and you kind of you have this one perspective of what you just saw, right? And so I think we're just trying to reveal a little bit more of the black box, if you will,
Yeah.
which agencies kind of protect and don't really share. And that's because we had to figure it out ourselves. I've been a brand builder. I've invested in brands before. Like I understand the pitfalls and the challenges and the risk. My old business, we had so much skin in the game, floating millions of dollars of inventory, uh,
Yeah.
but providing all the value-added services for free in a sort of profit center model. And so, we don't expect brands to just give us big retainers and trust us to go do all these things. And that's why these audits are important. I just wish they had an audit for husbands and wives. I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. So obviously after doing all these different audits, after just understanding the market and you being part of this space now for like, almost 10 years, like what are the trends that you're noticing right now that are coming up within the e-commerce space that are kind of top of mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think here in the US, it's kind of two buckets. I think the first bucket is the obvious one, which is getting the most out of Amazon. And I think that requires doing more of the same. It requires different thinking. So, whether it's pushing traffic to Amazon and taking advantage of the brand referral bonus that they offer, attribution has come a long ways in that space. So I strongly encourage people to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I think there's other opportunities though here in the US, and that's really on the other marketplaces. There really is a retailer around that doesn't have an open marketplace or some sort of marketplace you can participate on or in. So it could be Dick's, could be Home Depot, all the grocery stores. There's so many marketplaces now, and really, it's not terribly complicated to have a presence there. All been sold Channel Advisor and these other types of platforms before in the past, but the expense of that has really come down. And so now it's just a matter of, hey, I've got all my digital assets in a PIM of some sorts. I can push that content to these various marketplaces. And now an order just looks like an order, and I just need to be in a position to ship that out. That also requires that the 3PL industry has come a long ways, which it has. And so I've always been obsessed with that space, having past, and so having that capability has really enabled all of that to happen here in the U.S. But I think the other big trends are definitely social commerce and emerging markets. TikTok has been a huge eye opener for me. As far as your ability to get feedback from your customers, to see what works from a creative perspective, to go live
Mhm.
and you frankly, be in a position to sell to millions of people in one sort of go. But more importantly, it's just the way that younger generations are consuming data and converting. There's also this halo effect of social commerce, which is massive, right? And so being set up for maybe the windfall outside of walled garden of any marketplace. But emerging markets have been huge. I think specifically Latin America. I think what happened was a lot of people tried going into other markets out of the U.S. Latin America, they had a bad experience. It was pre-chasm. Those marketplaces weren't ready. Those consumers weren't ready. Now, Latin America, Brazil, and Mexico specifically, I think are the two fastest growing e-commerce markets in the world. And they're right down south from us, right? So with cross-border sales, sort of the agnostic nature of marketplace operations now, there's no reason not to. And we put a lot of time and energy in figuring out the logistics behind it because that really is the biggest cost contributor to the end price of the consumer when it comes to cross-border sales. But yeah, don't get me started on Latin America. I think it's the next big thing for most U.S. brands.
Yeah, yeah, Brad. Real quick, let's just pause for a second because like the connection is seems like you're. I don't know if you can like either get to a better spot in terms of the connection because it keeps kind of cutting out in and out when you're speaking. I'm not able to understand um, the whole point. I don't know if it's your connection. I don't think it's
Am
mine.
I jittery? Is that the problem?
No, it's not. It's just
Let's
like
try
it keeps
this.
cutting in and out, and it might be affecting the recording. I don't know if the recording's going to come out um as good as we'd like. So that's why I just want to make sure that before we continue, that are you trying to join through another thing?
Yeah.
Recording in progress. Recording in
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no, all good. Yeah, the connection was just like it was super spotty, and like I was getting like half of what you were saying, and then it was just cutting back in and out, right? And I was like, do I just continue or do we? And I'm like, I'm wondering if this is affecting the recording, and that's why I was like,
I mean, do you want to take it from the top, or do you want to just edit after? Like
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
works
So
for you.
we could take it from the top. No, not from the top. We could probably take it from. Let's see. I'm trying to think because I don't think we have to do the whole thing over again. I just want to make sure that you see. I have to give me a second.
Sorry, buddy.
No, you're all good. It's not your fault. Um, yeah, yeah. Now you're much better. So I don't know if it was like the connect, like the internet or whatever was going on.
It could be my Mac. I had some Mac issues this morning, and I thought I fixed it all. But
Yeah, now I can.
if this works, we can do this.
Yeah, yeah. Now I can hear you just fine. Um,
All right.
okay, so let's because it really started getting bad towards the trends question.
Okay.
So let's maybe just pick up from there, and then so what we'll do is we'll do a cut from your last answer, and then we'll go into this question. So I'll kind of just pick up
Okay.
from there. All right.
Perfect.
Yeah, so why don't you tell me, Brad? Obviously, you've been inside the space now for a little bit. You've been basically, working with a lot of different e-commerce brands. Like, what are some of the trends that you're noticing just from having these conversations and talking with these different folks?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much change going on, I think, in how specifically people are doing advertising here in the US. So that's a big one. So I call it alternative marketing. So if you're on Amazon or you're, doing things, pushing traffic to your website, I think that's what I'm seeing a big change in here in the US domestic space. Pushing traffic off of Amazon to Amazon, it was always kind of a zero sum game, but now with attribution and taking advantage of the brand referral program that they offer. I think that's becoming way more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
Using social commerce as a way to kind of grow your brand on marketplaces like Amazon, that's huge. Going live on TikTok, having creators push content on like a commission basis as opposed to a paid per post basis. That's become pretty attractive and economical for brands. And then, social commerce, which I just mentioned, huge demand for TikTok Shop, not just from US brands, but also from brands overseas, even brands in China who have had TikTok for years. It's one thing to be able to build an audience or following over there, but it's another thing to communicate to a different demographic, a different culture, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So we've been getting a huge demand for TikTok. The challenge there right now is like what's going to happen with TikTok, but we're pretty confident it's going to be sticking around. But social commerce for sure is sticking around, and so we see a huge opportunity there for all kinds of brands. And then emerging markets, right? I think a lot of brands tried to, expand overseas. It could be Europe, it could be Latin America. A while ago we were part of that, 10 years ago at Quiver, but a lot has changed since then, right? I think the advancement of 3PLs and logistics, the agnostic nature of many of these marketplaces in country, or just the expansion of marketplaces like Amazon into some of these countries have really opened the door. But for us, it's been cross-border sales, right? It's sort of this crawl, walk, run approach. You can be on a marketplace in Latin America call it Mexico, Brazil, Colombia. They're kind of the big three, but you don't necessarily have to have inventory in country, right? And there's all types of different tariffs and taxes and whatnot. 17 different countries in Latin America specifically, and so we try to make it easy when it comes to testing. So you can sell out of your U.S. inventory. The
Mhm.
closer to the border, the better. But there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can have a bonded warehouse, a free trade zone warehouse. There's all these things that you can do. You can split orders to reduce the duties. And so these types of things are extremely important when you first get into market, because if you don't think about those things out of the gate, you're probably going to have a bad experience and you're not going to continue to invest. So we have a lot of bets placed on Latin America,
Yeah.
and we're super excited about it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that continues to unfold, right? There's a lot to unpack, and obviously in those trends itself, right? And like you mentioned, the social commerce being one of the, I think, the biggest ones, right? And
Oh
that's
yeah.
going to continue to take over, right? In the
Oh
next
yeah.
coming years from it itself. I did want to segue just a little bit because I was curious to get your opinion on kind of growth in terms of your agency, right? Like
Yep.
what you guys are doing, because we talk a lot about that on this podcast in terms of what works from a marketing and business development perspective. And one of the things that we always harp on is how important building relationships are, right? Especially business development, even client retention. Like
Yep.
what has worked well for you guys in terms of getting new clients and bringing on new brands to be able to work with?
Yeah, I think I said earlier before the podcast that you asked what makes us different, and I said, well, we don't say no a lot, and really what I meant by that is we just love talking. Probably as you can tell, I'm fast talking now. Maybe that's the Celsius I just had, but just being in as many conversations as we possibly can, and it really doesn't matter who you are, your background, what product you have. We always learn something. We hope that they learn something, and it's kind of a numbers game as far as growing the business, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us live and die off referrals. We have a pretty good referral network, but that came from a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of contribution, a good karma, whatever it may be, right? And so, at the end of the day, you just don't want to refer people to anybody. You want to know that the person you're referring someone to is going to provide value and not make you look bad. And so we take every referral very seriously. We take every conversation seriously, and we just try to contribute. We try to bring value, and
Yeah.
I think people see that. I'd say we probably should restructure ourselves as like a 501c, because I feel like we're just giving away so much information all the time.
Yeah.
But there's a method to the madness. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely networking and referrals are huge. We do it. We have our own podcast. We do we have a lot of email campaigns that we do. Trade shows used to be big for us. We don't do them as much as we used to. But there's still a lot of value, I think, in going to the different shows that are out there. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's just talking, right? Just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
being available, being present when you're on those calls,
Yeah.
and when you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money, man. Right. I think that that's so important. And I think what you guys are doing is a good approach, is always a good approach to taking business, is to provide as much value as you can. And it's often reciprocated, right?
Yep.
And doing the things that, giving that free consulting, even just, having those conversations, right? People always remember that. And, even if the right time isn't now, right, for them, they're going to think of
Yep.
you as as soon as it comes, right? And
Oh
so
yeah.
it's important to kind of build that goodwill and be able to, try to help as much as you can. And I think that that ultimately is, the businesses that win at the end of the day, I feel like are the businesses that provide the most value to the
Yep.
marketplace, right? And so
100%.
I love that approach in what you guys are doing. It's similar to obviously what we do over here as well, in terms of our philosophy.
Yep.
Now, what's your vision, man? Like, what's your vision for current commerce? Like, what are you guys trying to build here? Like, what's that? Never like to look like 5, 10, 15 years out, but like the next 12 months, like what are you guys working towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we want to try to crack this sort of digital omni-channel code with our own sort of algorithm, right? Like I think at the end of the day, you know, the old business I had, Quiver, it was kind of this one playbook, right? Like, hey, brand, you have to fit into this playbook. You've got to fit into this template, right? Or it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we've kind of thrown that out the door and say, listen, we want to fit into the brand's playbook or the brand strategy, but also offer a couple of new plays while we're at it. It's like it's as if
Yeah.
like an offensive coordinator goes and takes over takes a head coaching job and a new offensive coordinator comes in, he's not just going to, throw away all the plays that worked from the year before. He's going to add some plays. He's going to kind of gradually kind of make it his own. At the end of the day, I think though, there is a formula, right, for every brand. That formula is different, and that formula cannot just be for how do I grow on Amazon. The days of those double digit growths on Amazon is pretty rare these days, unless you're a new brand that's so differentiated. Maybe you're first to market, maybe you're the low price leader, maybe you're value differentiated. But you kind of need all three of those things to grow that fast on Amazon these days. And so what we're kind of saying to the world is, look, there is another world out there, right? Come into the multiverse of e-commerce, right? Come do quantum commerce. These things all need to be talking together. You can't be making decisions in silos. You can't have different ad campaigns that don't really, aren't coordinated. I mean, there's just so much that goes into it. But the cool thing is the barrier to entry has come down so low as far as we are concerned. But it's just a matter of exploring it together with brands and not wearing the blinders like we talked about before.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to I love the vision, right? And it'll be interesting to see what you guys continue to do and how you continue to expand. There's a lot of different things there, and obviously you guys have already started to pave your own path, right? It's just going to be interesting to see what you guys continue to do. I always love to ask this question towards the end, kind of get your opinion on when it comes to all of the experience that you've accumulated, all the different things that you've done throughout your career. If you were able to kind of go back to your younger self, right, and give your younger self advice before maybe even started Quiver, before you even started Current Commerce, like what would be the pieces of advice that you would give to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I'm a tough person to ask myself that question because I feel like I didn't leave anything on the table. I feel like I went for it big time. I think I invented the side gig before that it was called a side gig. But I think what I would say to myself or what I would change is I think I would have kind of I think I would have started sooner than I did as far as making the necessary investments, right?
Yeah.
I was always trying to get something going, but I was trying to do it with my own money and with like on my own shoulders. It was a while till I had a partner. It was a while till I got an office. It was a while till I hired people. And it wasn't until I hired my first employee where I started to realize, like, my goodness, if I just would have done this 10 or 15 years ago, who knows what would have happened to those other projects, right? And so
Yeah.
that just that's a confidence thing, right? That's a
Yeah.
believing in yourself thing. That is putting your money where your mouth is,
Yeah.
and not just putting it all on yourself, right? And so, I've always been in sports. I've always been a team player. But you have to bring that what works in team sports to business,
Exactly.
and leave the ego at the door, check your pride, and just make the real the real investment, the big investment, right, which is more than just money, more than just your time. It is bringing other people together to achieve a common goal. So that's probably the biggest one, is not taking more serious steps towards success when I was younger, for sure.
I feel like that's probably a lot of the same stuff that I would say, right? And like in that itself, right? You always wish you start sooner because you realize it's just time in the game sometimes
Yep.
too, right? Like time dealing with it. But I can also see from the perspective of like, everything happens for a reason, man, right? You almost have
Yep.
to go through all that to learn the different lessons that you've
Oh
learned.
yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in that as well. So I think that's a perfect note to end, man. Brad, I appreciate you coming on, man. I appreciate you sharing your insights and seeing what the market's like. If people are listening to this, man, they want to reach out to you, like, hey, like, how's a good way we can get into a conversation? What are the best ways to find you, man?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our website, currentcommerce.io, my email, brad@currentcommerce.io. I'm on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So yeah, lots of different ways to get in touch. I'm on WhatsApp, on Slack. I don't know. I'm too old now, but like, gosh, you got to be on all these different platforms. But yeah,
Yeah.
lots of different ways. But yeah, just hit our website up. You can just submit your information there. It's probably the easiest. And yeah, one way or another, we'll get in touch.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure to include all those links in the description for people to go check out. Thanks again, Brad, for coming on the show. If you guys did make it all the way to the end, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. And go check out Brad and the team over at Current Commerce. We hope you guys have a great
Awesome.
rest of your day. And thanks again, my friend.
Thank you.